Hi. Oh my goodness, how are you doing? I'm not going to answer that question for myself because look at that. My hands are so warm. They left steam on my notebook. Um, this month, this is March, and it's already almost mid-March, and I have not had time to make any videos for my monthly vlog. So I'm not sure when it's going to happen. It's just this month is just one thing after another, and honestly, April's looking like the same with 2 trips, and it's a really busy time, a really confusing time, a really unsettling time. I'm sure you're all feeling it in one way or another. So I thought what I would do is hop on and do a video that has kind of 2 purposes. One is to profess my love for my notebook, and especially the one I'm using right now, and my history with this notebook, and then also just sort of weaving in the um, the trappings of stationery and journaling and fountain pen kind of hobby, and how it can spiral into excess very easily, and how relieved I have felt since kind of going back to my roots with my notebook and stationery. So my notebook right now, and I've talked about it in my last vlog, is Moleskine. And I decided to start my volume numbers back. I wasn't really having volumes. I was having dates on the sides and inside my notebooks that I've got, stored on the shelf, for the past, I don't know, since 2017, I guess. But I decided to start over because I've made a conscious decision to go back to my first notebooks in just a different form. This is the Moleskine Expanded Edition in hardcover. I used to use the soft covers, and I do a lot of writing in my chair now. I have this wonderful comfy chair, and so the hardcover is just practical because I can set it on my lap and write with ease. I don't need anything underneath it. So I decided to start with volume 1, and when this one is done, I'll put the dates on the side. But this is the Moleskine Expanded Edition, and I've talked about it in my last video, I'm pretty sure. It's the dot grid version. So I began this notebook on February 16th, and I'm already almost halfway through it. So this notebook has 400 pages, I think. So it's really, I go through notebooks quickly, and that's one blessing of having an expanded notebook. And I might, I was thinking every now and then it might be nice to go back to this size again, the sort of almost A4 size, just for fun, because this is what I used for years. But I wouldn't get as much pages, but I have more surface, right? So it should about even out, because this is almost 200 pages, I think. So I might just go back and forth with that just for variety, but do it in the hardcover edition, because this is what happens to the soft cover. I'm going to talk about this in a moment. But my index is filling up quickly. I just started the second page. Today I began on page 161, so I've got some pages filled in the back too. But as I've talked about in the last notebook, everything is in this book, and I did move my commonplace back into it. I moved it out for like 2 days and I hated it, so I put it back in. And this is my key. I've got 3 stickers: copper, gold, and silver. The copper is for wool gathering, which is my word for commonplacing. The gold is for a writing workshop that I'm in right now, and all of my creative writing exercises that I do, and also my writing for my Substack. And then the silver is for my book that I'm working on. I don't want these words seen. So everything is in this notebook, including my scheduling. So I'm using a dashboard from Baumkuchen, which I love. I just tape it in. I write down my menu. Inside is my dated calendar. And I haven't found a use for this yet. I'm sure I will eventually. And then each day begins anew. I put a little thing here that begins the new week. So here, there's been 4 weeks. This is the 4th week started. And then each day when I begin, I put my tasks for the day and any dated appointments, timed appointments that are in here. And then I just start, and whatever happens, happens. And I delineate it with this. Regular journaling doesn't have like morning pages and things like that, doesn't have anything like that. Very minimal decoration. Very minimal, sometimes more than others, but sometimes I have none. Sometimes you can tell when I'm writing because my handwriting gets really, really loose and sloppy. Sometimes I draw or sketch or do sketching exercises, but basically it's just beautiful writing all the time. I don't mean my writing is beautiful. I mean that I love it. I love to write. So it's mostly just writing, and it has that beautiful feeling that Moleskine has with either pencil or ballpoint pens. So I want to talk about that for a moment. Oh, I really liked this one, how that turned out, this here. So I want to talk about that for a moment. And there are a lot of videos that I've seen in the stationery community that I actually love watching because Moleskines are my favorite. And I've only come to realize that again in the past month, that talk about the paper and how horrid the paper is. And there's a bunch of videos about unicorn Moleskines where you can get paper that's actually fountain pen friendly. And I've had one that's fountain pen friendly, and it was a small little pocket one that I had. And, you know, quite honestly, sometimes when I'm writing things that I know need to be heavily edited, I skip a line. That gives me the room to do that. Anyways, this is this week, so I'm just here. This is my writing today. So, I've had a Moleskine that was fountain pen friendly, and the paper feels different than what I've been used to for the past, 20 years, right? So I really don't care what kind of paper I get. I'm fine with the other paper if I get it. I'm still going to use a ballpoint pen. I use my fountain pens for letters and things like that. I've also narrowed them down to just my very, very favorites and have the rest cleaned and stored. And I don't know if I'll sell them or I haven't decided that yet. But I'm truly a ballpoint pen, a lover of ballpoint pen. So in the back here, I did some tests, and you can see fountain pen bleeds right through this paper, right? So does heavy, this is just a very extra fine fountain pen, and it still bleeds through. And so does heavy gel pens, right? This is that's actually a fountain pen there, and it bled right through. That's a very, very fine nib, and it still bled through. This is a Uniball Signo, which really heavy blue ink, and it didn't bleed through. But these are all of my, where I'm testing my favorite gel pens, and some highlighters, some highlighters bleed through, some don't. Here's another fountain pen that bled right through. So every now and then I was checking different pens to see how they would do. But mostly what I love is I love graphite on this paper. It feels so nice to write. But I love the texture of ballpoint pen on Moleskine paper. I can't explain how much I love it. I love it. Highlighter works beautifully on it. The highlighters that I use are the Kokuyo, Kokuyo marking pens. They work really well on this paper. They don't bleed through, so I'm using those. I've got gray, a very soft pink, and I've got a soft blue. And they work fantastic. They do not bleed through in any way. So I want to go back. So back to the unicorn moleskins. It's a big deal, right? For people. A lot of people just want to use fountain pens. I totally get it. But the thing is Moleskine has never been good with fountain pens. Since I've ever used it, going on probably over 20 years now. So I think the main issue is consistency. Their quality control is out to lunch somewhere because their paper is so wildly different as far as that goes. But they all work beautifully with ballpoint pen. And the ones that are not fountain pen friendly are actually my favorites because the texture of the paper, the quality of the page, the way it sounds, the way it feels is my favorite. So I'm going to go back here for a moment because this is where it all began for me. Moleskines were my first notebook that I ever used that wasn't a composition book or a spiral notebook. Let me have some coffee. Hold on. So I want to say back in maybe 2004, I started using them. 2004, 2005. And that is also when 2004 is when I really started writing again. My kids were at an age where I had more time. They were in high school. I was starting to get more time, and so I was really stepping up my writing game. I was publishing. I was working with a poetry mentor who was the poet laureate of New Hampshire at the time. I was traveling to work with her. I had poems published, short stories published. I was writing for magazines. I was really deep into writing. And I decided somehow, I saw somebody using this Moleskine notebook, and I decided to up my game from composition books and spiral notebooks that I would just get at the drugstore. And there was something just so appealing about this little black notebook that was so sort of humble looking, but still just very nice. So, I think, I'm not sure. This is actually not a Moleskine. So I remember buying my first one. It was smaller than this. It was, and I've got it in my bedroom drawer. It's highly private, and because of that time, well, I'm not going to even go into it. It's highly private, and it's in my bedroom. It's in my underwear drawer underneath all my underwear. So that was my first one, and it was a Moleskine, and it was a soft cover, and it was just like this, but smaller than this, right? Like half this size, like this big. And I loved it. And I didn't have a lot of money to spend at that time of my own. And so when I went to buy it again, I wanted to get a bigger one, and the bigger one was so much more expensive. And I found this one right next to it. And this one was by Piccadilly. And I will tell you that it is not as well made as a Moleskine, right? I've got other Moleskines from this time, and they look similar. This happens, and this happens, and all of that, but not quite as bad as this one. But this is one that I found that was just so indicative of how I used my notebooks at that time. So I just want to show you. This is a working writer. I was writing for a newspaper. I was writing for a magazine. I did interviews. It was filled with, I was going to Greek school. It was filled with notes, right? So just big handwriting, 2:15 a.m., April 29th, right? So this is exactly what I would do. I was doing research. I was a secretary for a Greek Orthodox priest, and I was learning about so many things. And so this is, so I mean, just random things. And I was using ballpoint pens, right? Different colors. A lot of this, but look how messy. There was nothing in here that was anything like what I do now, as far as stickers or washi tape or anything like this. And this was, yeah, something I was doing for work. So I had work, I had writing, I had everything in here. Flight information. I was going to Detroit. Oh, I was going to Dallas. That was, yeah, something. I was going to Dallas. I was going for my my stepmom's birthday. So, I mean, crazy writing. My handwriting hasn't changed much, right? You can see work, other things. This was a story I was working on for someone else. This is my son in Ukraine. Their address. This, yeah, all sorts of things, right? Just work and everything. And then I in the back, I've got some Greek practice. I've got notes on a poet that I was studying. Greek practice, quotes that I wanted to remember. Oh, I lost my job for a while, so unemployment. I lost one of my jobs, and I was trying to get unemployment until I found another job because I had no money. Hence a Piccadilly notebook that fell apart quicker than a moleskin. I would just do little, I was really into Zentangle at the time. This is before I ever started drawing or painting. But I was really into Zentangle, and I had a lot of fun just kind of spending time with that. Playing, guess the word with someone at breakfast probably. But you can see that this is what a notebook means to me, right? This is a real notebook to me. So I've evolved over time, right? But this is how I would take notes for interviews for magazine stories. And then when I would write the story, I would X out the information that I used. That was my system. Not a care in the world for how this looked, right? Really something. So almost every page used. That was another interview I was doing. Right, and here we go. Last page is usually unusable, and I was done. So I just wanted to show you that because this is really a notebook to me. This is how it all started for me. And then around 2017, I somehow happened upon a video where someone was using a Hobonichi notebook. And it was filled with beautiful art. I was already an artist at that time. I started drawing and painting in 2013. And I was a working artist and teacher. And I saw someone doing beautiful art in this Hobonichi, and I thought, oh my God, I have to have that. It was so expensive that I had to save my money for 2 months to buy that notebook at that time. I loved it. I absolutely loved it, and I used it, and I kept using it. And oh, at this time, I was using a calendar, like a little pocket calendar, just like I'm using now, kind of like a Hobonichi Weeks, but very simple. You get them at the Hallmark store for free, right? So I remember those. They don't do that anymore, I bet. I don't even know if they have Hallmark stores anymore. We had the most wonderful Hallmark store in our village, but it's been gone for a decade now. But anyways, so I had my little pocket calendar, and I had this, and that's really all I had. Everything went in here. And I fell in love with the Hobonichi. I finally got one, and I used it for a long time. I used it for a couple years in a row. And I wasn't necessarily using it for a calendar. I was using it to do artwork. And for a while, I did it every single day. I wonder if I still have that. Some of my things are lost. I mean, they're probably not. They're probably in the basement in a box somewhere. But I don't have quick access to them. But it was wonderful fun for me, and that it just opened the door, and it opened the door to more stationery videos, and being aware that there were more fountain pens than the couple that I'd had for years. Fountain pens were just starting to pick up steam again, and inks were starting to get more fancy. And as an artist, as someone who loves color and texture and paper and notebooks and everything, I just fell down the rabbit hole, right? And it just snowballed from there. And I mean, when I tell you that as soon as I started having spending money, that every dollar that I had was spent on stationery and fountain pens and blah, 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 blah. That's no joke. I really don't buy anything else. I buy art supplies that I need. I'm not a clothing person. I'll wear the same outfit for 10 years. I really just could not care less. I'm not a perfume person. I'm not a purse person. I'm not a jewelry. I don't wear jewelry. I don't. I don't have. There's nothing else that I would spend money on except for books, stationery, and art supplies. Those are my things. So I don't know. I fell down the rabbit hole, and it got more and more confusing and more wasteful. At the peak of my wastefulness, I think for 1 year, it might have been 2023, I had 5 different calendars, like Hobonichi style things, and I was barely using any of them. It was overwhelming, right? And very expensive. So last year, 2024, and I'm not saying it's wrong, right? I'm just saying for me, it felt wasteful because I wasn't using them. I've got a bin full of partially used, beautiful notebooks. So and I loved it. I loved every minute of it, but you know what I mean? Something wasn't sitting well with me with all of it. So in 2024, last year, I really narrowed it down. And I could, if I look back on my notebooks for like the past maybe year and a half, I can see the slow transformation from less decoration, more writing, more everything in one book. Last year, I still had a few different books. And I was really into my traveler's notebook, which, so I was doing like the same thing in several different notebooks at the same time. And I started to really find my sanctuary in my notebook, which I have really for a long time, but I started naming it. And I'm a teacher, so I decided to create some courses around that. I created a course called the Notebook Nest, which is about narrowing it down to just a couple or a few notebooks that you really need. And over time, for me, that became one notebook, and that course was called Creative Sanctuary. And that's probably one of my favorite courses I've ever created. And during that course, I refined it down even further for myself. So I'd say for the past 6 months, maybe, I've been in one book with a few excursions into another one for commonplacing or calendar keeping. I still have my calendar that I write things down in right away. It's just a monthly calendar, and then at the beginning of each week I go to it and I write things down. I need to be able to see the whole month and months in advance, and I need to be able to see what's happened in the past. It doesn't work for me to do it like a bullet journal. And the other thing that doesn't work for me that I've learned is a daily calendar, because a day, like a page, isn't enough for me, right? So I liked the flow of having a day, right, that had my to-do list and everything, and then free space for me to journal, to do commonplacing, to make lists for things I needed, to do all the things, everything I needed, right, in one day. And then, that's a long day. And then the next day, there it starts all over again. And then when things were important that I wanted to index or remember, I just began making an index at the beginning of my book, right? This index then, right, when this book is done, right, this index gets copied into a master index. So I can quickly hold it and look and see where things are, which notebook it's in if I want to go back and see it. So that's it. That's my Moleskine. And I went from, I really love thinner paper. I don't like the really thick paper, even though it was allowing me to use my fountain pens. The Leuchtturm that I was using that had 120 GSM paper, a couple of different notebooks that I've tried had heavier paper. I don't like the thick paper. I don't like the way it feels. I don't like the way my pen writes on it. I love Hobonichi paper, but I'm telling you, it has changed. And um, even my ballpoint pens and my few gel pens that work on Moleskine paper are not the same on that paper. It doesn't have the same textile quality, the same feel. It's very thin. It looks similar, but it's not the same since the Hobonichi paper changed. So I kind of gave up on it. And now it's just the Moleskine. So the only other paper, I've got some random notebooks I use for certain projects. Like if it's just a project that I'm going to keep all the project in one notebook and then, either toss it or recycle it or store it for later reference. For those, I use MD notebooks and quite honestly, just Muji notebooks. They're really cheap. They're less than $5 a piece and just really, really easy to use. The Muji are a little bit nicer and I really love them. So I love Muji. I love, I'm not Muji, the MD notebooks like this. This is actually one that was from earlier this year that I finished. And I love this notebook, right? I can use fountain pen in here, all of that, but I don't love it as much as these. I don't know. It's just, the other thing is I was going through them so quickly. These, I can use for probably a month and a half to 2 months. You can imagine I can go through a notebook in a little over a week, a regular notebook, right? So this has really been great to have all this room and to really, even if I could get a month in here, it'd be great if I could come to a point where I could say, this is February, this is March, this is April, But, that might work for here. When did I start again? I started on February 16th. So it's going to go probably through the end of March, and then I'll have to have a new one. So maybe with April, I'll just start a new one, and I can try to make it a month per notebook. So that's it. I would love to know your thoughts. Maybe you're like me and you keep everything in one notebook. Maybe you are someone who loves lots and lots of notebooks. I'd love to know when your stationery habit started and how it snowballed for you, because it was so clear to me. It was that Hobonichi, right? And then it just kept growing. It was like a snowball. It just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger until it was just kind of out of control. And I don't know, I just feel so much better with this simple notebook and my ballpoint pens and a couple highlighters and a couple gel pens and a pencil. It's fun. I can choose pretty colors. They're inexpensive. I can take them with me. This is my pencil bag now. This is it. There's a lot of stuff in here. I think I went through them on the last video. But if a really cool new ballpoint pen comes out, I can try it. It's not going to break the bank. I still have to decide what I want to do with the fountain pens that I'm not really into keeping. If any of you are interested in buying fountain pens, let me know. None of them are crazy expensive pens. I have a couple that are expensive pens that I would never sell because they were gifts or they mean something to me. Like when I sold my first book, I bought myself a really nice fountain pen. So I won't be selling those, but there's a lot of them that were just for fun. And how many do you really need, So I feel good, and I'm not here to say it's not good to be like totally over the top with it. I totally get it. It's just not for me right now, at this time in my life. I just feel like less is more. And boy, do I treasure this book. It's what this was to me, but I've refined my process, right? I've refined my writing, and I like being a little bit neater, except when I'm really writing crazy stuff, then it gets crazy messy, but that's okay. That's what writing is. I don't know. I'm super happy. Okay, everybody, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed it. I would love to hear your thoughts. I still totally love watching stationery videos and watching people unbox things and do their journaling, and I love watching it. I get great ideas, from people. I don't use that many of them, but it's just kind of fun to see. I seem to get simpler and simpler, and there are a few people I follow who I've also noticed that over time, that it's getting simpler for them too. Maybe it's a phase. We have to go through before we arrive at what's really authentic to us, right? We gotta kiss a lot of princes before we find our frog. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. And I will see you again hopefully soon. All right. Take care.